All right, everyone, this is the first part of a multiple part series on how to set up a wealth operating dashboard that helps you see clearly trends, insights, and a clean snapshot of your financial situation. So I'll walk you through every step on how to set it up. If you're not interested in setting it up yourself and customizing it for you, you can go ahead and click the link in the description and get the template and then start from there. But again, this system probably won't work well until you get all parts and you follow along. Otherwise, you'll have to do everything manually. But let's go ahead and jump in. So the first step, let's name it. So I'm going to name it Wealth Operating System, and I like to make some borders around it. So I'm going to change the first two rows to 9 pixels, and then the first two columns 9 pixels. Let's start with about 6 columns. So let's start, roughly here, and that's fine. We'll keep that in mind. But this only goes to about 30 rows. So let's select that row. I'm going to hit Shift, select the last one, and delete all the rows. This makes it a little bit more manageable. Again, we're going to shrink the bottom 2 rows to 9 pixels, and then let's shrink some of these to 9 pixels. It can be anywhere, it doesn't really matter. Let's go to J to T, and we'll delete these. So now we have a nice box, and what I like to do is I like to fill in around the box. But before we do that, let's remove the grid. And so we'll go View, Show, and remove grid lines. So there's now no grid lines. Select the first cell, and I hit Shift Command and then to the right, and it will select all. And then I like to fill it. This is where you can pick the color scheme that you like. I have a unique color for my branding that works for me, that I enjoy. The same thing goes for all the way around. So we'll fill all the way around. Just to create a bounding box. It helps things look a little bit cleaner. So this is the way I tend to enjoy doing it. We're going to make all the rows 30 pixels. So I'm going to change all these to 30. And then this first column I'm going to change. And of course, this can be unique as we go along. So that one was 268. This one is going to be 74. Let's go back, resize 74. And this one will be 128. And then from there, we'll freeze the first 3 rows. There we go. And then we'll fill in this first column here with our color. I'm going to select everything, and this is where I'll change my font. So I like to pick the font. So I'm going to pick this font here. And then in the first section here, we're going to put key performance indicators. And then we're going to pick our font, and then we're going to increase the size to what we like. I'm going to stick with 12, and then I'm going to change the font color, and then I'm going to bold it. I'm also going to center it and center it here. The next one, we're going to do benchmark. So these will be the benchmarks that we set for each KPI that we set. And then I'll do the same, so I'll copy. There we have our benchmark, and then this is where I'll freeze the columns where I want to see. And then from here, we go with the year. So we have January 2026. This can go here. And then the way I like to do it is I like to see the month, the earliest, or the most recent month closest to the KPIs, if that makes sense. It will make a little bit more sense here in just a second. So I'm going to adjust these things like I mentioned. And then let's resize these columns so that they look a little bit better. And then we're going to insert enough columns to fill in the month, or fill in the year, excuse me. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we have March 2026. So we're building it out for this year. So we have to August, September, October, November, December. So we need 4 more months. So if you select 3 and drag over, it will keep the same formatting. And because it automatically updates as a date, it will work properly. So at the end of the year, you'll be here, and naturally it will be filled in. You can do it this way, or you can do it 1 month at a time. I typically like to do it 1 month at a time, so it would look more like this. You'd start in this month, and then next month you would insert a column. You would then update each benchmark. But let's go now through the benchmarks, and we'll add what we want as our benchmarks. So we'll do income and expenses is our first section. So again, we'll just make this quick by doing a vertical line. And then we're gonna make this bold. We're gonna increase the size again. We're gonna keep it left justified. And then we're going to add in our color here. We're gonna do something very similar down below, but then we'll need our benchmarks. So we have, total expenses. And then we do total income. And then we have expense to income ratio. Perfect. So there we have everything set up properly so far. So as you can see, we're starting to build out benchmarks. We're starting to build out some of the sections that we're going to be tracking on a monthly basis. So then this one becomes savings and investments. And then we have savings rate. We have emergency fund coverage. We have net worth. And then we have a rolling, I like to track the rolling 12-month growth from my portfolio, just because this includes contributions. I like to track this rather than just my growth rate, because I can control the total growth, including contributions, a lot more than what the market does. It's hard to just set a benchmark for something I can't control. So that's the reason I like to set a 12-month rolling growth rather than just the growth rate. The next section is debt management. And then we're going to do debt to income ratio. And then we're going to do credit utilization ratio. And this one is important for your credit score, allowing you to get better terms on loans. And then we're going to do a debt repayment progress tracking. This will track how much debt we're paying off as a percentage of our total debts, which is nice to see. It helps you feel like you're making progress towards paying off your debt. Then we go to budget and cash flow. We obviously want to focus on generating cash flow on a monthly basis. So the first one is the budget variance, how much we are spending under or over our budget. And then we obviously want to do our cash flow. So I'm just making sure everything is proper here. The next section, we will do retirement readiness. A lot of people don't focus on retirement as early as they should, but this helps us stay focused on long-term investments at any point in our life. So we have investment contribution rate, our projected retirement And age balance. So this is our balance at retirement age, which is roughly 65 and a half, but we'll probably do 65 for ease, but we'll see. And then our current portfolio value, and we want that to be increased on a monthly basis. So this is looking good so far. And then our benchmarks, I like to put these in yellow to help me stay focused on what's most important. So I'm going to make these sections yellow. And then you'll see what we'll do next. So here we go. We'll make all these yellow. And then I'll actually delete this row so it's cleaned up a little bit. Inside of the tracker, what I like to do is I like to make these sections look like cards rather than just, they start to kind of blend together. So we're going to go to borders, and I'm going to change the border color to white, and then I add a thicker border, and then I do all borders. I'll actually remove the borders here on these gray sections so they go all the way across. It looks a little bit better. We'll keep those uniform. But then these look like little cards that explain how well you're doing on your financial status. So our total income, we want to make sure this is obviously greater than whatever we set. So for example, let's say we want to make our total income on a monthly basis greater than $10,000. So let's properly format this as well. Perfect. And then I have some notes that I'll input to help. So I'm going to insert a note. So the total income is where you track all sources of income: salary, investment, side gigs, anything, any sort of income that you get. It could be a birthday gift, it could be whatever. You track all income sources. And then you set your benchmark. You say, I want to generate $10,000 a month, or I want to generate $5,000 a month, or $1,000 a month, or $50,000 a month. Whatever your goal is, that's your benchmark that you're setting for this KPI, which is total income. Now, total expenses, I'll pull in the definition to help. Let's insert a note. So the total expenses is you're monitoring your fixed and variable expenses, things like rent, utilities, entertainment, groceries, any and all expenses you are tracking. And in this case, I'm going to do a greater than, and I'm going to say a negative number. So let's say we want to do less than $5,000 per month. So we can make this, I don't actually really like to use 2 decimal places. I like to try to keep it as clean as possible. So I'll just match this when it comes to formatting. So that looks good. The next one is expense to income ratio. And I'll insert our note. So the expense to income ratio is your total expenses divided by your total income, and you multiply it by 100. This is just saying the percentage of your income that's being spent. And the goal is obviously to keep it below 80%. This allows us to have cash flow, to generate savings, things like that. So we want our expense to income ratio to be less than, let's say, 80%. So we want it to be less than 80%. And for example, if we hit our goals, if we hit our benchmarks here, our expense to income ratio would be 50%, meaning we're only spending 50% of our income, which would be a great thing. That means you're cash flowing $5,000 a month. Your expense ratio is 50%. That would be phenomenal. So you'd obviously be hitting your goals. In this case, having $8,000 total expenses, this would give you 80%, as $8,000 is 80% of 10K. Let's move on to savings rate. So the savings rate, insert our note. So the savings rate is the total savings contribution you make in a month divided by your total income, and you multiply it by 100, giving you a rate or a percentage. This is basically giving you the percent of your income that you save. And in most cases, you want this to be at least 20% of your income is what you want to be saving ideally. So let's say that. So you want your savings rate to be greater than 20%. Next is our emergency fund coverage. So let's go into emergency fund coverage. Let's insert our note. So the emergency fund coverage is just your emergency savings divided by your monthly expenses. And the goal is to have 3 to 6 months of expenses. So this would be things like investment accounts that are more liquid, like brokerage accounts, things like that. So we'll leave that. That isn't really necessary right there, but that's just a little explainer. So what I would say is something like we want to have 3 months saved. So that'd be perfect. So let's put this here. So we want 3 months. And then we'll calculate those things here. So then our net worth, we just want to be increasing it on a monthly basis. Is what we want to be doing. That can come in multiple ways. That could be come from an increase in income. It could be a reduction in expenses. It could be an increase from investments. It could be paying off debt. There are so many ways to increase your net worth. And that's the goal of tracking your net worth, is to be increasing it on a monthly basis. So let's insert our note. Insert note. So our net worth is our total assets minus our total liabilities, is what our net worth equals. And the goal is to increase it over time. And I typically will input my net worth at the end of each month rather than the beginning. So at January 2026, at the end of this month, I will input my net worth into that cell right there. Then the rolling 12-month growth. Let's insert our note, our help note. So this is the portfolio value that you hold today divided by the portfolio value that you held 12 months ago. And we want to be growing our portfolio value, 5, 10, 12, 15%, depending on how big your portfolio is, how much you're contributing, things like that. But ideally, you want to be making 10% in the market with your contributions, if possible, things like that. But if your portfolio is relatively small and you're making a decent contribution, it will grow it'll be a larger number than 10. But in this case, we can put an example of 10%, let's say. So again, these are all just examples. These are not benchmarks that I follow. But the nice thing is everyone can put in their own benchmarks and it will track for them. So let's move on to the debt to income ratio. Here's our note. So the debt to income ratio is your total monthly debt payments divided by your monthly income, and you multiply it by 100. And you want to keep all the money you're putting towards debt below 36%. This is what will help you be qualified for a mortgage if you're looking to buy a home. That's kind of what most lenders are looking for on a mortgage. So let's say our goal is below 36%. So let's put in 36% and we can match our formatting. Credit utilization ratio, let's go through that. Let's input our help note. This is your total credit card balance divided by your limit. And then you multiply it by 100 to get a ratio or a percentage. So let's say your credit card balance, or your balance at when you're payment is posted is $2,000, and let's say your total credit is $10K, you would essentially have a 20% ratio here. And the goal is to have it below 30 for a strong credit score. It helps build your credit the lower it is. And so let's say we want to keep it below, okay, we can stick with the goal below 30 as an example. I think that's fine. Obviously, you want to be paying off your full balance every month. You don't want to be carrying any credit card balance if you can. That's a big goal. So if you're carrying a balance, try to pay it off rather than just making minimum monthly payments, things like that. So the debt repayment progress, let's look at that. So the debt repayment progress is your debt payment, the debt you've paid off divided by your total debt. The goal is to get this number to 100%. So let's say I have 100 grand in debt and I've paid off $1,000. That means I've paid off 1% of my total debt. So the number would come out as 1%. What I like to put here is increase it by more than 0.5% or more than 0.1%, or all of these numbers are unique to each individual. So whatever works for you in your current situation, obviously this is a benchmark, so it's more of a goal. This is something that you hold yourself to a standard. You say, this is what I'm going to do month in and month out on a consistent basis for years to come, ideally. You can set, the way I do it is I set a goal in saying I want all my debts, mortgages, cars, credit cards, whatever debts I'm carrying to be paid off in, let's say, 20 years. So then I work it backwards to understand what percentage of my total debt do I need to pay off per month in order to pay off my total debts in 20 years. So let's say in this case it's 0.25%. We want to pay off 0.25% of our total debts each month. Just an example. It could be significantly more, it could be significantly less. Again, whatever works best for you. The next one is budget variance. So let's go insert our note. And the budget variance is the planned budget, which in this case is essentially your total expenses. So our total expenses is 8K minus your actual spending. So whatever you spent in that month divided by your planned budget, multiplied by 100 gives you your variance. And you want to keep it within 5 to 10%. So that means you want to be, I would probably say something more like 10%, which is essentially saying you're willing to in some cases spend $8,800 would put you 10% over your budget. And that's kind of putting yourself in the green. What this does is this controls lifestyle creep. So a lot of people, when they make more money, they spend more money. But what this is controlling is saying, when you make more money, we're not just going to increase our expenses and keep our expense ratio the same. So let's say I make 20 grand. I wouldn't then spend $16,000 and be happy with my 80% expense to income ratio. You want to consistently try to keep your expenses as low as possible, eliminating lifestyle creep, and that's the goal of the budget variance essentially. So in this case, we're going to put 10% here and saying that you want to keep it less than 10%. Cash flow is your income minus your expenses. So let's put in our note. So cash flow equals your income minus your expenses, and you want a positive cash flow every month. But you can definitely set a goal. So let's say we want our cash flow each month to be greater than $1,800. Now, if we hit our benchmarks here, then we're bound to hit this one. So let's say it's $2 grand per month. So that's how that works there. So I'm going to match this formatting to make it look good. Investment contribution rate. This is how much you're contributing to your retirement. based on your income. So retirement savings rate is the retirement contributions divided by your income multiplied by 100. And this money can be taken out of your 20%. So let's do some math. Let's say you make 10 grand in a month, you spend $8,000 that month, your cash flow is $2,000 per month. And let's say you save that $2,000 of cash flow, that is 20% of your savings rate. So you're hitting all these benchmarks properly. Now, let's say you make within those expenses, you pay off some of your car or your mortgage or your credit cards, and you pay off a percentage of your total debts. You can hit that number. You keep a low credit card balance, you're hitting that number, and you're not spending more than 36% of your income on debt payments, then you're doing good. And then you can take from this cash flow and invest some of that money into your retirement. Now the goal in some cases is as high as 15%. Some people it's higher, some people it's lower. But let's just set an example of, we want this to be 10%, greater than 10%. So basically we're saying we'll take $1,000 of our cash flow and we'll put it into retirement as a way to pay our future self. The next one is the projected retirement age balance. Insert our note. This is your forecasted savings at retirement age based on the current contributions. So this will take in how long you have until retirement, how many years you have until retirement. You need to make an assumption on the return that you'll make depending on what you're investing in. And then your contributions will also be calculated into this based on your contribution. And then it will give you a number. So let's say you want to retire with more than $2 million. And that will give you the ideal number that you want to hit for your retirement. And I'll show you how to calculate that in the next part of the series. And then the last one is our portfolio value. And we just want that to be increasing monthly. And the reason we want to just increase it monthly instead of setting more of a number benchmark is because we can't control the market. We don't want to control the market either necessarily. We don't want to be trying to time the market. What we're going to be doing is just wanting to increase monthly. And I think that's pretty much common sense. But yeah, all these things I think are beneficial in tracking your overall financial picture. Now, again, none of this it is financial advice, meaning all of this is unique to each individual. You need to be setting these benchmarks yourself. These are benchmarks. This is not how you move your money. This is not how you invest. This is just how you track the money that you do make and making sure you're making smart financial decisions with the money that you have. This kind of sets up the guidelines of what to do with your money when you make it and how to keep yourself, on track long term with your goals and the benchmarks that you set. So in part 2, we'll go through the monthly calculations and I'll show you the next tab that you would set up in this operating system. I'm going to rename the tab to finish off Key Performance Indicators. And then with that, we will finish up, and in the next video, I'll go through the next sections.